There we go. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to AFFIRM's May Virtual Speaker Series. I'm Jackie Rubino, AFFIRM's president. Thanks to all of you for joining us for today's event, CIOs Shaping the Next Decade of Government IT. We'll kick off the event today with a keynote address from our new federal CIO, which will be followed by a panel of esteemed CIOs from across government. Today, you will hear about federal IT priorities and the long-range view of technology that is shaping the future of IT across government. Today's session is on the record, and we welcome our colleagues in the media. For those of you who are new to AFFIRM, the Association for Federal Information Resources Management, we are a nonprofit, volunteer educational organization with the goal of improving the management of information through technology within the federal government. Our existence spans over 40 years. In the spirit of AFFIRM's charter, we have raised and contributed well over $250,000 to date for high school and college scholarships. This year is no different, as we expect to award more than $25,000 in scholarships and grants in the coming months to worthy STEM students and programs. Today's event would not be possible without our generous speaker series sponsors: Veritas, Avantis Federal, Fed Insider, Google Cloud, SAIC, and ServiceNow, as well as our sustaining partners who are shown on the slides. Thank you for your generosity. I would also like to thank our volunteers for their hard work and continuous efforts to bring programs like today's event to you. Special thanks and appreciation for planning today's program goes out to Bill Pratt, Melissa Bruce, and Onelia Codrington. It is now my pleasure to introduce Onelia Codrington to provide an update of our upcoming 2021 and 2022 program term. Onelia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jackie. Good morning. In following the AFFIRM bylaws, today we're announcing the nominated slate for the 2021-2022 elected officers. We do plan to send these out via email after today's event. And the nominated slate are, for President, Jackie Rubino from the Department of Homeland Security, First VP, Mark Crisco, Department of Defense, Second VP, Beth Ann Killeran from GSA. Now for programs, we have for Government, Melissa Bruce from Department of Treasury, and we have Bill Pratt, Department of Homeland Security. Industry side, we have Peg Hosky from Hosky Communications and Robin Gardner from CGI Federal. For Treasury, we have First Treasury Bob Suda from Birdsong Partners, and we also have a second industry person, Don Finhagen from IBM. Government Treasury, we have Stacy Riggs from GSA. For Secretary and Industry side, we have Jonathan Auburn from ServiceNow. And we also have from the government side, Patrice Clemens from Department of HUD. Now we also have 3 past presidents that are our directors, and we have Stacy Riggs from GSA as stated, and Adrian Gardner, who's retired, and Richard Young, who's now in industry. At this time, I would like to invite any additional nomination for candidates for officers from the floor. If you do have a candidate or nominee, please email it to info@affirm.org by 5 p.m. today. I'll repeat again, info@affirm.org by 5 p.m. today, Wednesday, May 19th. Now, I would like to take the opportunity to introduce the one and only Mr. Bill Pratt to provide a few quick housekeeping items for today's event. Over to you, Bill.
Thanks, Onelia. Hello, everyone. A few quick housekeeping items for today. If you have a question, simply open the Q&A tab on your toolbar and ask your question. If you see another question you'd like the speakers to answer first, you can upvote the question that somebody else has put in there. If you're having any technical difficulties, use the chat box in your toolbar to chat with the webinar host, and we'll be watching that and taking care of you. We've also included a brief survey at the end to capture your feedback on the event and help us continually improve. We appreciate it if you can take a couple moments to fill that out at the end. The survey will pop up in your internet browser as soon as you close the Zoom application. And now, without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce today's moderator, Jason Miller, Executive Editor of Federal News Network. Jason?
Thanks, Bill. I've never heard such a exciting introduction for myself before, so I'm honored. Thank you. Thanks to Jackie Rubino, thanks to Anelia, thanks to all the folks at AFFIRM, Bill and Peg and Robin for inviting me. This is great. I always enjoy these events, and AFFIRM's been one of my favorite organizations to help out. I get to the pleasure of introducing Clare Martorana. I even practiced your name, Clare, over and over again, and I'm like, Martorana, and I still flubbed it. But Clare is the federal CIO. You know me, I don't do a lot of intros, but I will just say Clare's been the federal CIO since early March. Before that, she was OPM's CIO, one of probably the toughest jobs in government. And before that, she worked at the US Digital Service and did some work with the VA. So Clare, without further ado, take it away.
Thanks so much, Jason. And it's really a pleasure to be here today, having the opportunity to speak with everyone. So I, having had the real benefit of sitting in the CIO seat, CIOs play such a critical leadership position, helping with the strategic, technical, and management initiatives across an agency, really helping with driving agency goals through enabling technology. And we're at such an exciting time in the federal government where we are really evolving, in all of the areas, everything from our information security, many agencies moving into a DevSecOps model, really evolving our customer experience and leveraging data as a strategic asset. Always while focusing on mitigating threats in this environment and also driving mission growth. So as a technology leader, CIOs enable and really help the agency's digital business ecosystem as well. And I'll be talking to you a little bit about digital services and some of the exciting things that are going on right now in government. The way I think about the government is thinking every day about the American public and the experience that our customers expect in the 21st century. So, I can order a salad and have that salad delivered to my door, or in the old days to my desk. I know who the person is who's delivering it, what exact time it's going to arrive. And those are all expectations that the American public has applied to our government ecosystem. So we know that using data and design to build and deliver more secure digital solutions can really transform how the digital ecosystem works for all of our customers. And our customers also include our federal employees, our retirees, our agency colleagues. And it's important that we think of this as an enterprise. And that has been something that I have learned through my time at the US Digital Service and my time sitting in the CIO seat at OPM. So, modern government also ensures that these services are simple, effective, but also respectful of the needs of the users, meeting the users where they are. So it's important also for us to think about our vision for this 21st century customer experience and not leaving anyone behind. I think about a 360-degree omni-channel experience, providing tools for all customers, no matter where they live or how they work. But we have to be cognizant of, we have urban, rural customers, we have young and old customers, we have some that are tech savvy and some that are tech novices. And we need to design and deliver our solutions to make sure that we are supporting people with all abilities and all states of minds. While our solutions are hopefully digital first, they won't be digital only. There's still going to be needs for this evolution for us to sometimes speak to a human to get the job done, or sometimes need to fill out something in person or on paper. And that's okay as we continue on this digital modernization journey. I think COVID-19 has really made some of these issues really front and center for us. And we have been investing in government services in a very forward-leaning way, but also in some ways that really underscore the challenges that our agencies deal with in delivering services to our customers. So one of the challenges that I think we are going to continue to focus on is procurement and how procurement impacts our ability to deploy our dollars effectively, meeting the needs of our customers. Also, the scale of our delivering these digital services across this enterprise. Many agencies, we are sharing customers, right? You're not just a customer of one agency. You're oftentimes interacting with multiple federal agencies at one time. So one of the really interesting tools that we have is the 21st Century IDEA Act. It is I think the actual title is the 21st Century Integrated Digital Experience Act, short, the IDEA Act. And it really provides a blueprint for the federal government. It underscores the importance of these digital services, as I mentioned, and helps identify our need to transform some of these very daunting and confusing paper-based processes into digital services. But again, with a focus on making sure that we meet our users where they are from a customer experience perspective. So some of the biggest barriers that agencies have had is this complexity with procurement and funding and dealing with legacy technology. So one of the great projects that we have been working on is the Technology Modernization Fund. And we have been able to evolve the TMF with an infusion of $1 billion in funding that was made available through the American Rescue Plan. And we rolled this out in the evolved framework for that a few weeks ago to agencies, CIOs, CFOs, CISO community, the acquisition community. And it really prioritizes our funding in a couple specific areas. Modernizing high priority systems that we already know need to be improved, cybersecurity, which is always front and center, these public facing digital services. And then another area that is really important to me, which is cross-governmental collaboration and scalable services. The other great thing that TMF has done is we have been able to evolve our payment flexibility. So previously, it was a program that you paid back a loan. You basically took out a loan from TMF, and then knowing that you were going to get savings over multiple years, you developed a payback plan with your CFO and with the TMF team. So we have been able, through this COVID and American Rescue Plan funding, to evolve and create some repayment flexibilities. And those include full repayment is still an option, partial repayment, and then minimal repayment. So we are going to be working very collaboratively with agencies to see where their projects fit in these different priority areas, and hope to be able to roll out some really high impact projects that are helping us with our cybersecurity maturity across our entire federal enterprise, as well as getting to the work that many agencies have been undergoing for multiple years, which is modernizing those high priority systems and trying to roll out these high impact public facing digital services. And again, as I mentioned, really working collaboratively. Many CIOs that I talk to, we're all solving the same problems, but we're solving them at our own agencies. And we are trying to work as a CIO community across some projects that hopefully will have a great impact, helping us scale, continuing to secure our technology and cybersecurity footprint, and then continue to modernize our digital services. So exciting times to be part of technology in the federal government, exciting times even under these very challenging COVID and economically challenging circumstances. I still think it's a great time to be part of government. I'm excited to work with my colleagues and answer any questions that folks might have. about this. So thanks, Jason. And such a pleasure to meet you, by the way, Jason Miller, after all of these years.
All right, now, if you can't see me, I'm turning a little red, so I have the lights on, so that helps, but no, thank you. Do you have a minute or two for questions, or what's your time like?
Sure thing.
Okay, because I can ask all day, but I would like to open it up to the audience because they're the most important people. I'm, as I told Keith, I'm just the pretty face. So let me throw one back at you. A couple have just come in. I'll go. I think it's our old friend Steve Cooper, former CIO over at Commerce, former CIO at DHS. I'm sure I missed something, FAA, and he wants a very simple question: what are the top 3 priorities of the Federal CIO Council? What comes to mind?
I think the cross-governmental collaboration, scalable services, and then I guess I would have to put cybersecurity front top of all of those. There's nothing more important right now that we're focused on.
And we're reminded of that with all these emergency directives that CISSP continues to put on the plates of our CIOs. One quick follow-up on that. When you talk about the scalable services, obviously one of the key terms there is shared services. There's been some movement on the QSMOs, one of my favorite acronyms in government, the Quality Service Management Offices. I know there's some things that are still under discussion. I know the PMA is still in process.
Yeah.
What have you seen from the QSMOs? What's your current thinking about? Is there anything you can share?
Yeah, I think what we're looking for is feedback from the community. I think there have been lots of great ideas that have been investigated and tried previously in government. But to my point of us as CIOs, we're all solving many of the same problems. So also the cross-governmental collaboration, right? If we're rolling out a certain type of software, for example, we're all doing it starting at the base level of we're moving to the cloud. There are best practices that all of us can share as a federal CIO community. So I think that collaboration is really key, building out the playbooks, sharing those best practices so that everybody isn't starting from a blank piece of paper and trying to learn in their agencies, because each agency is at a different level of maturity. OPM, as you mentioned, we were a little bit further behind in some areas and could have benefited from another agency that had gone on the journey a couple of years ahead of us.
All right, I know there'll probably be more will come out around QSMOs and shared services, and I think you guys are in the Biden administration are calling it something new, which is great. I'm going to throw if you have a couple more that popped up, my friend Aaron Boyd from NextGov asked a doozy. No, I'm just kidding. It's a good one though. Is the Office of the Federal CIO working on an update or a new IT modernization plan? Is there a holistic IT modernization policy in the works?
As a matter of fact, we kicked something off with the CIO Council last week, trying to get to exactly that point. We're all trying to solve the same problems. We all understand what the risks are and the opportunities for us to both travel together as an enterprise, but also, again, uniquely look at each agency's maturity level. But we are working together to I had a mentor years ago who used to tell me, you stand for something or you stand for nothing. And so we do want to be public about what we stand for as great IT leaders in government. And so that is something that the CIO Council is actively working on.
I imagine it's still early on, so asking more questions about it may be difficult, but is there any sort of vision you have for what this plan, strategy, whatever we're going to call it, it's going to look like? Is there anything more you can offer?
Not at this time. We're just convening the working group to actually lean into this. So that's kind of step one, is making sure that we have the right folks with the level of interest at the table and participating, and then bringing the wider CIO Council together to convene around those ideas and pressure test them. Because, in a working group, sometimes you have aspirational ideas that might not some real blue sky. And sometimes you have to bring them down to meet the moment where you are. And again, this pandemic and the economic challenges that the country is facing and our agencies are facing, might cause us to put that out in a different cadence. So to be determined.
All right, I know more will come. We'll bug you on that.
Yeah.
Do you have time for a couple more?
Sure thing.
Okay, good. I know I don't want to keep you up. The gentleman who's responsible for FITARA in a big way, Rich Butel, asks, could you elaborate more on the efforts to implement the IDEA Act? We believe it's very important, but getting traction at the agencies has been difficult. So what else can you tell us about IDEA?
I'm actually really excited about the IDEA Act. I think it is really a great blueprint. I know that there hadn't been an enormous amount of guidance provided. So that is something that we are working on internally at OMB to make sure that we can cascade the right guidance out to the federal community. But I think, I use the term kind of motherhood and apple pie. When I read the IDEA Act, it made me smile because there are so many things that I've spent my career working on that are included in the IDEA Act that I'm really enthused about the opportunity to work on it, more collaboratively with my government colleagues.
All right, so you got the words of guidance coming, so obviously more to come on that, but we should expect maybe something a little more directive or a little more, hey, here's the parameters we need agencies to stay within the guardrails. That's what this potential guidance would look like.
We're working on that internally at OMB, knowing that we do need to provide that out into the federal environment.
All right. Well, if there's one thing I would offer is this started during the Obama administration with Tony Scott, and I thought it was a great idea. He was releasing some draft guidance for feedback. And I knew during the Trump administration, they followed suit. I hope that you all are seeing the same benefits of that too. Both it's good for folks like me because we love news, but also because I think, as you said, the community is impacted. We have two very similar questions. Kirsten and hopefully I get her name right, Veva. Right, very similar questions about the partial repayment, minimal repayment plans. People want to know what is the criteria or how it will work.
Yeah, if there is a project, we are working out with the project management office at GSA, which actually helps administer TMF. We are working on the specific project by project guidance for that. So the best thing to do is if you have a project, we wholeheartedly encourage people to reach out to us, not to self-edit out of TMF, since this is evolving. So if you do have a project, please reach out to the PMO office. There are templates on tmf.cio.gov/ARP. So if you take a look there, there's contact information. Please reach out, and we are happy to walk through that model with anybody. And we know that we will continue to put guidance out related to that as we see what the incoming is of the project proposals, and then continue to communicate on that.
And obviously, a good reminder to agencies and CIOs alike that the project, the initial consideration of projects June 2nd, I think I remember correctly, and that's not the only one, but that's if you want kind of expedited.
Exactly. We got commitment from the board, which are all federal employees that have other jobs. The board came up with the June 2nd date, and we all made commitments to block enough time to do these priority reviews, knowing that because of COVID and SolarWinds and the reason that the intent that Congress gave us the funding, that there's an urgency. And so we made that commitment to spend as much time as we could to get through those initial project proposals to be able to put them on the right course. So we committed that time to June 2nd to kind of force ourselves in that framework, but we will be on a rolling basis reviewing projects. So it is not a deadline, it is guidance.
I know that it's you still have a couple of weeks, but do you get a sense from talking to CIOs and other agencies? Do you expect 100 projects around June 1st? Do you expect 1,000? Do you expect 5? Do you have any sense?
I'd say under 100, but a pretty robust set of projects are coming in so far.
Yeah, and again, trends wise, anything you can comment on around a lot cybersecurity, a lot on the public facing? Are they across those 4 areas or broader?
Yeah, primarily, those are such broad areas to an IT portfolio that they really, almost everything that we're seeing fits into those categories. So it's nothing surprised us so far, to be honest.
Which is good news, right? I mean,
Yeah.
someone didn't come in and ask for, if for $999 million, we could do this, and there's the whole fund. So
right, that one brilliant idea.
The one brilliant idea. There goes all your money.
Exactly.
All right, one last one comes from Mark, and hopefully this is an easy one. Has the Office of the Federal CIO investigated the use of identity use management in augmenting authentication and controlling business processes? It's kind of a new term for me, but maybe you understand it better.
There's a lot of work going on in this whole category, right? We definitely understand that the identity continuum, authentication identity continuum all the way through is something that is top of mind for almost every CIO that I talk to, both for their internal systems and also their service delivery out to customers. So this is an area that we will continue to spend a lot of time on, also convening across government as well as industry partners to provide us some guidance in this area.
All right. And I know with the cyber executive order, zero trust architectures and identity management are huge. So you'll have plenty more probably to talk about as we go forward.
We sure will, Jason.
All right.
Thank you so much.
So this was great. Great to meet you in semi-in-person, and thanks so much for your time. And we'll give you the virtual round of applause. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks so much, Jason. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, now I guess if the rest of our panelists turn your cameras on, and we'll get started. Obviously Claire did a great job. It was great to hear from her. Great to understand what's going on. And now we'll get started with the panel. Now, as you heard, I'm Jason Miller from Federal News Network, executive editor. Always do my shameless plug of 1500 AM and of course, federalnewsnetwork.com. So I think the fact that it was great to hear from Claire, that was, I think, her first public speech since she became federal CIO, and first of probably many, as if we've seen previous CIOs talk before. That was nice to get us going, but I'm going to give you just a few statistics to kind of keep your mind on track, and then we'll get to the panelists. Let me start with some numbers. 10 and 14, that is the breakdown of the numbers of letter grade Bs and Cs on the 11th version of the FITAR scorecard. So that means agencies are making a lot of progress. All right, on the opposite side of the spectrum, 1,376, 3,049. Those are the numbers of recommendations GAO has made since 2010 to OMB and agencies to address shortcomings in IT acquisitions, operations, and of course, improve cybersecurity. Finally, last of the day, 90.9 billion. Most of you probably know what that means, the federal IT budget for 2021. Now that's up from $89.3 billion in 2020 and $87 billion in 2019. All of this is just to kind of put you in the frame of mind to see what agencies and what CIOs are dealing with. Now, if you've seen me moderate before, you know I like to keep it pretty organic. I like to keep it pretty fast moving, and I like everyone to participate. So we got some good questions. Reminder, use the Q&A feature. Don't use the chat feature. I may have missed some earlier, and my apologies for that, but the Q&A feature is the way to reach the panelists. I've asked each panelist to take 3 to 5 minutes to tell you something you don't know about what they're doing with IT modernization. We're not going to do backgrounds. If you don't know what SBA does, look them up. They're on the Google. If you don't know what State Department's mission is, again, you can find who they are on the Google. So again, submit your questions and we'll get the panelists going. Just a little context for our discussion. I think the pandemic has really shown not just the value of the CIO, the person, but really the role that IT plays. Quick story, former VA CIO, Jim Jaffer, told me a story about when the pandemic happened and they were having trouble connecting remotely. All of a sudden, the non-IT folks really understood why technology is so important, why technology needs to be like electricity, right? Just turn it on and it works. When the electricity goes out in all our houses during a power outage, we're all kind of lost. Where's my flashlight? Oh, I got to light the candle, right? And I think that realization happened to a lot of non-technology people across the government. So we have SBA, leader in cloud and data. State Department creating a common platform for back office systems, really guardrails for mission owners to develop services. PTO, DevOps, they're out in front of everyone else. And FDIC, most recently moving low code, no code, code cloud platforms. You can see where everything is going. And so let's get started. Let's get everyone together. Panelists, jump in. Sylvia, I'll give you first shot to tell us something we don't know about what you're working on at FDIC.
Well, I'm not sure. It's nice seeing you again, Jason. Not sure how much people know or don't know about this, but we've been working on something called a rapid phase prototyping acquisition at the FDIC for probably around the last year. And it's really an innovative approach to basically kind of exploring how the FDIC could be doing some of its business differently using advanced technologies, and kind of turning the tables around by going out to industry and basically asking them to propose solutions around issues we have. So, for example, the FDIC regularly every quarter we collect data from banks called the call report, which we get basic data from the banks, which is used for many different purposes. One of which is to help our bank examiners prepare for exams. And some of it is we were entering the pandemic last year and uncertain about what the impact was going to be on the economy. Part of the thinking was, could we rethink how we get that data so we have more a real-time sense of what's happening in the marketplace? So basically we went through this phased approach where, I think we started with over 30 vendors coming and proposing solutions for how we could do things. And it was really like taking things kind of out of the box, helping us to rethink how we're doing things, going from more manual approaches to completely automated, and how that kind of interfaces with folks who do our mission. And so it's gone through 3 phases, and we're actually, it's kind of like more than 30 vendors started, got down selected to a smaller group that basically got a little bit of money to put together more proposals, just like deeper conceptual proposals. And then in the 3rd phase, they actually had to build little prototypes. And so those are being looked at now, and we're hoping that some good things come of it.
Now, I know that FDIC also was one of the few agencies with a different type of CIO, a Chief Innovation Officer. Is again, I know he's fairly new, but is this part of that effort? I know that he's
Absolutely.
looking externally, but he's also maybe some internal.
Yes, we were really lucky to have Sultan Megdi join us as our first Chief Innovation Officer at the FDIC. And he's leading, he's going to be leading what we call FDI Tech. And this project will actually be under him. So we got it started before he showed up. So it's, my team was playing a big role with folks in the mission, but ultimately he'll be taking it over. And the way we see that relationship is like Sultan really like pushes the edge in terms of really looking at what could we be doing differently at the FDIC, challenging us. And basically the way our relationship's going to be is his great ideas, the ones that actually turn into things that we want to bring into the organization and scale for production use. Basically, my group will take it over and actually implement for the FDIC. So it's how you take a great idea and make it something that everybody can benefit from.
All right, and then I want to bring in the others, but real quick, you mentioned phase 3, build some prototypes. Can you talk about 1 or 2 that really are exciting? I know they all are, but is there 1 or 2 you would feel comfortable highlighting?
I know that we're still kind of in a, we're still in the procurement process. No decisions have been made, but some of the interesting things that we've seen is, there's a very manual process that goes on for bank examiners, and a big piece of work in evaluating assets is reviewing loan files, and those loan files, typically they're paper, and a lot of, FDIC, we supervise like kind of small community banks, and we work with the states on that. And in those smaller banks, I would say there's much less automation, kind of writ large. People do things differently, just like, throughout the country. And part of the thing is, can we get some sort of automation around loan files so that people are not pouring through paper, right? Or even like screens that have, just like the loan portfolios on them and have to manually go through that. Can there not be some technology that can help go through that and assist the examiner to help identify, potentially problem areas? So that's an example of one of the things. It's just impressive, actually, what industry has that we think we could leverage.
All right, that's a great example. Get rid of the paper without a doubt. Speaking of paper, let's move over to Jamie Holcombe from the Patent and Trademark Office. I think PTO got rid of the paper for the most part, right?
It's gone.
All right, you told me something I don't know, so let's move on. No, let's tell us how PTO is moving forward with IT modernization.
Well, I'm going to keep going with that innovation concept, Sylvia, because one of the things you might not realize about PTO is we just hired a new emerging technologies director from Facebook. Now, he's a young man that has a lot of vision and strategy. But the biggest thing that he's trying to emphasize is the way to think differently about innovation, specifically emerging tech. And that is, the reason it's called emerging tech is because it's immature. And the immaturity of something makes it, by definition, not able to be used in operations and maintenance. Why would you bet the crown jewels on something that might blow up in your face? So you better have those pilots and those proof of concepts out there. And that's what R&D is all about. And so between the R&D and the operations and maintenance are those pilots. You get from here to there. The problem is the government's not very good at R&D. In fact, the first thing that's always cut is research and development, right? And so you have to think about emerging technologies and innovation as your research and development are. I mean, you should not cut it off. You should actually fund it. But you have to fund failure. Huh? What a concept. Oh my gosh. The government has lost its mind about sunk cost. Oh, we're going to stick with this forever. No, you have to think about throwing good money after bad. Don't do that. You starve failure and you feed success. So the fact of the matter is, you have to plan to lose money. That's hard on taxpayer dollars, right? You can't do that. You can't waste our taxpayers' money. But you have to do R&D. You have to have innovation. And so one of the results of our emerging tech going from R&D to O&M, we have the new search tool for our patent examiners. And here's a neat, really cool thing. I do think that it may apply everywhere in the government because it is the coolest search algorithm you could ever imagine. Think about this. You are finding a needle in the haystack. And what is that? The patent examiner has to figure out what is unique and novel, and that's never been ever invented, ever thought about before or put into place until now. How in the world do you do that? That's amazing, right? But what we've provided is a new search tool to go out there and create and search on concepts rather than little word searches. When you search on a concept, you create a haystack, and you can create these different haystacks and then search for the needle within the haystacks based on the relative ranking and the strength of what that concept has instead of just word searches. So there's a lot of greatness coming out in the future. And I just want to say it's all based on the fact of taking R&D innovation and transferring it over into the O&M world based on real pros and cons, the business case that you derive from your pilots and proof of concepts. Back to you.
So the logical question is, how many failures came before the success of that search tool? And how many is maybe a relative term, but there was some good and bad that came from it. So how'd you get from here to there?
There is no magic number, right? Everybody's looking for that standard operating procedure. Well, if we have 3, it's too much. But if we have 6, say, no, it's not that way. In fact, when you think about it, innovation in Silicon Valley and so forth, right? every 7 out of 10 businesses truly fail. So it's only the 3 that succeed that we hear about. So failure is much more common than success. And we really need to think about that with R&D. So I'll throw that number out there for you, Jason.
All right, and that tool that you talked about, that search tool, is it in pilot? Is it in production? Where is it in the realm of things?
Rolling it out to our 9,000 examiners over the next 12 months.
All right, plenty more there. Hopefully that will spur some questions about what's it look like, how's it working, and all that. Let's turn to Keith from the State Department. Keith is we'll call you the newest CIO on the panel today, but I think if I remember correctly, you're not new to the State Department.
Well, I am new to the State Department, and thanks for having me, Jason.
Well, I ruined it then. No, just kidding.
You were close. Hey, I have to cover the same energy he just had. So, so hey, you know, my background is with DHS and formerly Legacy INS. And I think, like you said before, others can read the Bible and everything on their own time. But I think what's going on new at State right now is really our movement into a shared responsibility multi-cloud platform. You know, this is where leveraging the right tools for the right jobs and also getting more into that DevSecOps responsibility between the IRM organization and our business customers. One of the things that I keep stressing to our team is that our customers are kind of like at the center of it all. We have to work side by side with them, whether it's here in DC or whether it's out at post. And I think we've seen that engagement. One of the priorities that I've been talking about throughout since I've been there since January is customer centricity. So I think between getting everyone into this multi-cloud platform where they're able to develop applications that benefit the post, I mean, this is nothing new where you have at agencies where you could potentially have shadow IT. And in order to conquer some of that shadow IT is give them the guardrails to operate with it, right? And that way you don't have to worry about your ATOs getting out of control, which is something else. We can go into that later. But certainly it provides them the flexibility to address the unique requirements, because each post, each embassy, they all do something different. And they may be able to leverage portions of it, but there's certain aspects of it that they have to tailor to their own, and having them on the shared platform. And I think even yesterday, today, and also tomorrow, we have this App Dev Summit going on that I've been participating. So I'm moonlighting to be here. So, I mean, App Dev Summit, we have 700 users across all posts throughout the world. And they're participating, understanding the direction of the department, what we're doing from an IRM bureau perspective, how we're helping them, where they can help us as well. And having that true customer engagement is so important.
You bring up shadow IT, and I think that's a really important issue because I think a lot of CIOs face that. And I know I've talked to your colleague, Brian Merrick, several times over the last year or so about creating that common platform. That's what this, if you will, app development summit is really doing, is introducing the people that aren't in your office that are on those posting stations around the world. Hey, we have these guardrails. Let's all go down the same path so we don't have to worry about the things like ATOs. Is that really the message that you're trying to send?
Most definitely, you know, and I think that message is starting to come across and sink in, where, you know, everyone understands that, hey, you know, if we leverage, you know, these installations that we've established, then they don't have to go down through these rabbit holes in order to get things done and hide things. Because, you know, one of the things that I've been doing is really focusing on what's sitting out there on the network, where it's just sitting, and is it authorized or if it's not. And certainly in times like now, especially with all, you know, we know adversaries are out there. They will continually try and penetrate our networks. So we have to make sure that we're out there, you know, keeping a secure network.
And I want to go to Keith, but real quick, any thoughts you can share about shadow IT in terms of how pervasive it was in the State Department?
I think it's pervasive in the point that, you know, there's a lot of ATOs out there that need to be completed. I'll say that. And so while I think posts and users, you know, have tried to make do, I think corralling it all in and bringing them back towards a center ground is really going to help us. And that's one of the things that we want to really focus on. That's where some of my efforts are now, to reduce that. And we want customers to communicate their needs, right? We don't want them to go and develop things on the side and no one knows about it. And then all of a sudden, here comes the IRM police saying, you know, cut it off. And it's something that they could have gone and worked on the right way. So I think we're going down the right path. We have great communication going. I don't hear many complaints, which is, I mean, if anything, they're now saying, you know, we really appreciate you reaching out and having these discussions. So I think we're trending in the right direction.
Good news, and don't be the CIO no, right? What's the old
no, you can't. Yeah,
joke?
It's not the CIO no. It's let's see how we can work and make this happen for you.
There you go. All right, Keith, you bring us home. You're batting fourth, cleanup spot. SBA is one of those places that have really gotten out ahead of a lot of agencies with IT modernization. Tell us something new.
Well, first of all, the newest thing I found out is that after listening to Claire's brilliant comments, I don't have an original thought. So she's really leading the way on a lot of these things. For our agency, the last 14 months have been pretty amazing. A lot of people didn't even realize up until the pandemic that we were actually a cabinet level agency. And then we kind of got an outsized role as we started going through the pandemic. And, you know, we pumped out more loans in 14 days than the agency had in 14 years prior to that. So sum total over the last year, we pumped out over $1 trillion worth of capital into the economy. And the only reason we were able to do that, we have a couple of different organizations that pumped out a lot of that capital. But a lot of the work that was done prior to my arrival over here with Maria Rote being the previous CIO, she had basically modernized a lot of the infrastructure, the background infrastructure into the cloud that allowed some of that scalability. So those kinds of things that at the time, maybe you don't realize what is going to be required when you go down the road, but that pandemic really highlighted that, hey, we had to move fast. We had to be able to scale quickly. And a lot of that work that was done previously, maybe not with the intent that you're going to scale up to something that is exponentially larger than what you've done, but we'd actually gone down that path. Now, the one thing that we are working on, and the thing that was highlighted through all of this, is that I know it's not a sexy term, and we did this many, many years ago in DoD, business process reengineering. We found that these different organizations, part of our folks work with the banking ecosystem to sit there and pump out capital, and other parts of our organization actually issue loans. So between those two different things, business processes, there's a lot of commonality, but they didn't operate commonly across our entire agency in here. So that's one of the big things we're looking at right now is, okay, where are those friction points? How can we alleviate that? Ideally, free up some humans to start doing some more valuable work in other areas.
All right, I know we got a lot of questions in, so I'll remind the audience, please keep them coming. Keith, one quick follow-up for you. I love the idea of business process reengineering. Are you at SBA able to do that because you have that common infrastructure now? You've got the first layer done, and now we can move to the second layer, which is, okay, how do we all start down that path of common data, common processes, and the like?
Well, it's interesting because we are confident we'll be there because we're putting in a TMF proposal that'll be for $999 million. So we'll get all that. But the one thing, and I think Sylvia brought up a great point, that, you know, oftentimes we don't know that we're going to be in a position to need to do certain things. And this pandemic really highlighted the level of actual touch and paperwork that we had to deal with. It's like, that's really not If you look at the modern mortgage industry, most of us who've refinanced a home can do that in a matter of minutes, and we should be able to do that in government. So there was a kind of an imperative as we saw how much paperwork and how much touch labor we actually had going through the process. We said, look, there's an imperative to get to this point where we can really digitize a lot of this and make it a lot more efficient.
All right, well, it's good news. All right, panelists, we're going to open it up to the audience questions. And Sylvia, you got a bunch of them. So let me start with the one from Liz. She asks, are these types of strategic FDIC initiatives FDIC announced for, I'm sorry, how are these types of strategic initiatives announced for industry to participate? I guess she's asking more about the phased approach and where does industry play in that effort?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the outset, just given what the concept was, it is very specific to things that go on in the banking sector. I think there were probably, I don't know, it may have been almost, I think it was maybe under 100 companies, but close to 100 that were initially identified as playing in the space that we were interested in. And so I remember that we had kind of almost like an industry day where we invited them in and we talked about what we were looking for. And so, I mean, that was how the process got started. If people are interested in learning more about what I was talking about with rapid phase prototyping, on fdic.gov /FDI tech, there's a link there to rapid phase prototyping that tells a little bit more about what was involved there. And I think it has a little outline of the companies that ended up being down selected. But I think it started with kind of more focus on looking at companies that were in the space that we were looking at.
Sylvia, if you get a second, if you don't mind putting that in the chat for everyone, because you said that website
Sure.
fairly quickly, but when you get a second, let me open it up for the rest of the panel. Very similar question. Sylvia mentioned innovation. Jamie mentioned innovation. If there's always a lot of industry on these events, if they want to bring innovation to you, how do you open that door? How do you accept that innovation beyond work with our acquisition office, look at Fed Biz Ops or whatever we call it now, but really, like, how can they really kind of get that in front of your folks? Jamie?
Well, it is using a white paper that's actually structured in a business case format to the use case that the agency has. If you can show me in black and white the pros and cons and how in your past performance at agency XYZ, you did this, and it applies to my problem, my mission, then I look at that and I say, this is market research. I can take this requirement and put it out there on an opportunity. Hooah. I hate it when everybody says, well, let me hear what your problems are. Look, I don't have any problems. I'm operating a great agency. Go away.
No problems, right, Keith?
Yeah, I'll tell you. Oh,
sorry, I forgot we had two Keiths. My fault on that.
Go ahead, Keith.
So I'll say pretty much the same thing, just what Jamie just said. You know, it's the white paper, and you know, when you send an email in, and all of you figure out how to get to me, because many of you already have. So my inbox does get, you know, flooded at time. However, you know, I do look at it, and I look to see what's being brought to the table, and you know, some companies are including, like, this is where we've done business, this is where we are in the process, which really helps, and I communicate that to our team, especially in the cloud area as well, and then areas around architecture and design, things like that. We're taking a look at those, and I'm having our folks, hey, go look into this, and then come back and let's have a discussion about it. Then we'll bring in a vendor and talk to them.
Other Keith.
Yeah, I second all of those things. I mean, a lot of times we hear, you know, we're in the IT field, we're all innovators. We're all thinking about how can we leverage new technology, and there's no shortage of people that are telling us that we can solve the problems, we can, you know, solve famine and all of these types of things. But the fact of the matter is, it goes back to what are my problems? If you can sit there and show me how I solve my problems, and maybe you don't necessarily have the direct solution for that, but if you can actually demonstrate that here's where I've done it before. I used to joke that I was from Missouri, the show me state. Show me where you've done it before, where this has actually been a successful use case. I'm much more inclined to listen to that and have my folks spend some time to say, okay, is this something that can help here?
All right, so let me play devil's advocate on everyone, and not everyone did what FDIC did, which is put out this kind of, hey, we were looking for innovations in this areas. Jamie, you speak a lot of events. I know Keith speaks a lot of events. The other Keith from state, you will be speaking a lot of events now, I imagine, because you do one, you're on the hook. But where can we, like how do I find your problem? Like, it's not just they're in the ether, right? And they don't just exist. Do you do something very similar to what FDIC did, which is, hey, here's the areas we're trying to innovate through? Give a sense, because I think there's a little give and take on both sides. Jamie, go ahead.
So last year we put out something called the IAISS contract, which specifically went out over innovation. You know, it's like, show me the emerging tech. We currently have 13 companies on that are helping. So it's easy to look that up and then figure out who those companies are and say, hey, look what we got, and, you know, maybe work together, right? Because I always like when people work together, it's a lot better solution. That's one way. The other way is to think about what the missions are, right? And that's where they want to say, well, let's talk to you about that. What are your pain points and so on and so forth? I mean, it's obvious when you put out a solicitation what the pain points are. So what you want to do is the market research and be able to shape the opportunity in order to figure out, oh, we got some understanding more so than others. Let's get together and make sure we win this opportunity. So I love the whole thing about vendor days when you show the capabilities of certain solutions. And I think that's what we need to have more of, industry days where people get together. I know the State Department's big into it, so I like that.
So I'll say for state, something I've already started is just that, industry days. We have a couple coming up. We have, I think, one coming up around June 8th on our Vanguard follow-on contract, and then one the week of June 14th that we're going to be doing as well on the road. So, I mean, well, it'll all be virtual, but certainly we're going to be communicating that. And these are the type of forums where I would definitely bring the team into to have discussions with industry. I promote that. I think it's so important. I want to get, you know, there's some of our folks, they do the talk circuit, but then there's a lot in certain areas where they really don't want to come out and speak. But I'm pushing the envelope there and challenging them. Hey, let's get out there. Let's communicate to industry. They are interested in being our partner. You know, let's not have this wall where no one knows what's going on or how they can help, or how do I get this meeting with Keith Jones? How do I get this meeting with the deputy or something like that? I want to make sure that industry kind of like knows what our needs are, what our priorities are. We push out our IT strategic plan periodically, and it's actually an agile IT strategic plan where we're introducing it each year. So there's a frequent update. And so following that, and that's posted online, you can pretty much know the direction that we're going.
Yeah, I'd add into that, you know, on this panel here, I think we're demonstrating that we've got some pretty incredible innovative thought in the government side, but industry brings an awful lot to the table. And my experience has been that if you can sit there and do things like RFIs or industry days, they're very, very helpful in understanding what is the problem set that you're dealing with. The frustration we have a little bit, you know, certainly in SBA right now, is the volume, you know, we're bandwidth limited, the volume of actual procurement activity to sit there and actually go through the process of getting an RFI and setting these things up. It's a little bit challenging at times, but I think that getting industry to come in and hear what your situations are and then providing potential solutions for that is helpful. And the other thing that I'll stress, and I've said this many times when I've had talks, is that trust is a big factor for me. If you not only show me where you've done this before, but if you've also been patient and you've been willing to walk me down the path of, okay, here's how we can be a trusted partner. Those are things that really hold sway in the long run for bringing in innovative ideas.
All right, let's move on to some other questions. Jamie, I got one from you from, I think it's Chalk, if I get the name correctly. This person asks, how do you fund those quote unquote failed projects? How do you manage the budgets when there are more than one failure?
Sure. The point is you expect failure. You don't plan for it. I mean, you plan to fail because you need to figure that expectation. But if you're planning and funding failure, that doesn't make sense, right? The point is you expect everything to come out successful. If you have 7 of 10 fail, that's normal. So that's where the expectations and so forth lie. Now, how do you fund it? It's emerging tech. Do you put all your eggs in one basket? No. You have to have your O&M. You have to have your development. Then you have to have a portion of your budget. I don't care what you call it R&D, call it emerging tech, call it whatever. But if you don't identify that in your annual plan and then execute it, you'll never get ahead. You'll always be behind. Now, you could start out, and I've seen agencies do this one too. I depend upon industry to be my R&D. And therefore, you're going to contract for that R&D, that pilot to come across. Then it has a lot to do with your procurement team and how you evaluate those pros and cons and how they fit into the agency. And that's a very viable way to do it, that you don't have to spend a lot, that you're expecting industry in the commercial world to show you what's what's correct, what's right. One of the things I've always said is the government can't afford to be bleeding edge. I can't have a bloody nose, but I can be leading edge. You take away the B, okay? That's what I think.
Sylvia, you were shaking your head. You're just going to weigh in a little bit about this idea of well, failures is not the best word, but we'll use it for now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think everybody starts with like hopefully a great idea about something that we want to do that helps the business. And what we're trying to do is, optimize the success of whatever's going to happen, right? The effort, the project. But it's a thing of, we're trying to push, Jamie knows this, in my organization, we're trying to do what his organization has successfully done, which is implement Agile DevSecOps. And with that, I mean, Jamie was talking about, it's like if you're going to fail fast so that you can learn from whatever you did and improve and pick yourself up and keep going. So some of the things like that basically what we're moving to is this idea that, when you have a proposal for doing something new, come before a little group, and this is something that we're still forming, so it's not a done deal yet, but come before a group and make a pitch about what you're going to deliver, and like what's going to be what we call the MVP, the minimum viable product, and how much do you need to get that going. And we'll give you just a little slice of funding so that you can prove to us through showing us you can deliver business value through that MVP. And we will kind of go through a different kind of governance process to check on your success, check where things are going wrong, maybe things are going right, going wrong, and basically, incrementally fund. So it's not like, let's fund everything all at once. Like, let me give you $100 million and 10 years to do this gigantic thing, which is like bad idea. But more realistically, come to me and pitch me an idea of something that's going to be meaningful for the organization and what little slice of money you need to prove to me that this is a good idea. And let's start that way. And then let's check in with you and see how you're doing. And if you're doing great, then maybe you're going to ask me for another slice of funding and we'll give it to you because you're showing value. But if you're not doing great and this is proving to be a bad idea, well, we can kill the project right there and then. So that's what I was thinking when Jamie was talking.
Well, Sylvia, that's a great segue because, again, from our friend Steve Cooper, he asked a question about TMF and any plans to apply for the TMF. He's asking the entire panel. I'll maybe take a half a step back because I know that there's always some sensitivities around whether or not somebody wants to talk about a specific project or program. Because if you don't get funded, maybe that's something that I'd call it embarrassing, but maybe it's not something you want to put out there. But give some thoughts about the TMF. Is it more appetizing because the payback model's changed a little bit because there's other options for the payback model? Keith from SBA or Keith from State, either of you want to jump in here and talk a little bit about your thoughts around the TMF, the $1 billion, and the excitement over the changes?
So I think that the panel, even going back to discussions we had with Tony Scott some time ago about the payback model in there, I think it was still a very good thought process of, okay, let's get some savings and roll that back in. We've been looking at this extensively since we heard that this was going to be coming out. And one of the things that we tried to do, in fact, we had a conversation with Clare at one point talking about, what are those kinds of things that all agencies could benefit from? And we had a situation last year where, unfortunately, one of the vendors bored through a fiber junction into the western part of the DC area, and it took us down for about a day and a half. And at that point, it's like, holy cow, all the major providers were out and said, we cannot have this kind of construct. So at that point in time, we really started getting engaged with a lot of organizations that provide this digital real estate, if you will. So saying, look, if we can provide ourselves the lower layers of the tech stack there where they're resilient across the entire United States, that's always backed up, and just lay the applications on top of that. That's something that now gives you resilience and gives us that kind of capability in the event that there's a local outage. And that's something, that kind of construct, that I think is beneficial probably for a lot of agencies. In fact, I know when I was at NASA, we were looking at that technology over there. So I think that some of these things are things where they're going to be expensive. We are probably going to try to pursue that regardless of the TMF. It's always better if we could get some infusion of funds elsewhere, but that's one of the things that we're primarily focused on right now.
At State, so the TMF, I think the new model is very attractive. Certainly, there's lots of things that we can think about where we can leverage the TMF. One of the biggest priorities, of course, is going to be around cyber, and looking at various projects that we have prioritized at the enterprise level is going to be kind of like my first priority. And I think what I do like about the way the TMF is shaped out is that both the CFO and the CIO has to sign off on any project being put forth, whereas a bureau or no one can go around anyone in the department. Well, everyone's going to know about it because I'm going to provide full transparency as well as to what programs and projects we may have submitting TMF requests. But at least we as a department can look at it, prioritize it, and see where it really fits. But certainly the model, the payback model, is extremely attractive, especially when you can't afford. I mean, you look at certain areas within the department, and funds were actually cut because of fees were down, this, that, and the other. So I think it's to our advantage to really leverage this new payback model. Look and make sure we have the right projects that we're going after. We're not going after the wrong thing, but the right projects. And we have, not only that, we have the schedules, we have the plans, we have everything all set in stone. Because what I don't want to do is react to something. I don't want to say, oh, here's the funding, and now I'll go start planning. No, we have to plan now in the event that we do receive the funding so that we can then execute.
So Keith, before Jamie or Sylvia jumps in, I got to ask, sounds to me like you're going to roll some dice and throw some proposals against the wall.
Oh yeah, we're and I think it's the right thing to do. I think what the interesting aspect of it is, we've heard from the council that they're going to make decisions relatively timely, where they're not going to have projects just lingering out there and you just don't know. But certainly we're looking forward, and I have our team really leaning in and preparing the necessary documentation, paperwork, and back-end project schedules, strategies, and who's going to represent what on what teams, this, that, and the other.
All right. Sylvia, Jamie, either of you want to talk a little bit about TMF and why, if it's more attractive than maybe previously?
I'll throw it to Jamie, Jason, just because FDIC is not an appropriated agency. So although TMF is less relevant to us, but I would just say, having come from Interior, where it would have been relevant for us, I think the options that Claire talked about are very exciting. If I were in a CFO Act agency, I'd be very excited about that. But I'll let Jamie speak.
I can't say anything other than what you said, because fees do not equal taxes. We are not able to mingle. We do not take 1 penny of taxes. We're fee funded.
All right, well, that's fine. Couple other questions that have popped up. Interesting one from Liz. She asks, across all agencies or across the panel, what emerging technologies are you looking at? What's exciting? AI, multi-cloud, high performance computing, and just talk about it wherever you think is best.
So I'll kind of chime in there. It's one of the things that, we talked about business process reengineering earlier, but part and parcel of all that is when we really ramped up to sit there and start pumping out all this capital across the nation here, we ended up bringing in a ton of people. Just from an HR standpoint, it was incredible the amount of people that we brought in to assist with that. And one of the things that has become obvious over time is that, look, a lot of this stuff can be automated. How do we sit there and transition from low value work that people are doing to high value work, so that when we're paying those individuals, they're doing something that can't be automated? So what we've done is a lot of work to determine that, hey, there's a lot of automation opportunities in here. So that means AI and RPA. So we're taking a look at those two things right now. We've got some pilots going on, and the appetite for that has been through the roof. So part of this will be, unfortunately, probably a victim of our own success in there, and that they will want much more than the rate with which we can deliver.
And Keith, roughly how many pilots are ongoing? Is it 5, 7, 3? Do you have any idea, just generally?
So, well, the ones that I know of, we have 7, and I'm sure that there are many more than that. We're trying to get our arms around just making sure that it doesn't go crazy.
Others jumping on the technology question?
Jason, maybe I'll jump in and just give a pitch for zero trust architectures. Just because I've been heavily involved in it with the Federal CIO Council since 2018, and have been, I know, like with the Cyber EO that came out, it's asking for all agencies to look at that. And I've been working with NIST, and we have this interagency zero trust group that's been in place since 2018 on this. We actually work with NIST to have them develop special publication 800-207 on zero trust architectures. So that is something I think that is on the radar for everybody. I mean, it's a game changer about how to approach cybersecurity, and moving on from this the practice of a perimeter-based defense model, and really going into kind of a much more, I would say, resilient approach. That's more dynamic. The one thing I would say is that in all the work that we've done over the last 3 years, is that there is really no silver bullet for zero trust. Zero trust involves some complex things. It's really about having a handle on identity and all the people who are kind of doing anything in your network. It's also about what resources they're using, what their devices they're using, right? And it also has to do with the data. So, I mean, these are huge. Each one of those is huge. And you have to get your arms around each one of them. So what we found is there is no one technology that will get you zero trust. It is going to be an architected solution of an amalgamation of technologies. NIST is actually working right now to hopefully soon, by this summer, get a demonstration project launched And so our interagency steering group is very much involved with them and watching that. They will produce a practice guide out of that, and so they're going to be basically testing 6 use cases in their lab, and so we're excited to see that. So while I know agencies are being asked to produce their plans for how they're going to move to zero trust architectures in 60 days, the truth of the matter is it's a complex endeavor. And in my opinion, I think some of our team members are actually working on like maturity models around zero trust. And I think it would be wise to kind of have agencies look at where they are with that maturity model, where they stand, and develop their plans from understanding where they're coming from, because it is very complex and it is not one technology that's going to get you there.
And I think the one piece that people sometimes overlook is the components that make up that architecture you already have, whether it's through continuous diagnostics and mitigation program or other tools that have come with it. There's a lot of those pieces there. Is the CISO Council, I'm not sure if you're still working with that council, but is anything, are you guys, I know you said you're watching the NIST efforts and working with them, but is there anything else coming from the CISO Council around zero trust?
Well, I'm actually going to be briefing the CISO Council this afternoon about what the interagency steering group has been doing. And actually, I think that so yes, there's a close, so I co-chair the Services, Strategies, and Infrastructure Committee, which is kind of a peer committee with the CISO Council. And we took on zero trust there. So yeah, well, we're definitely collaborating. Steve Hernandez, who's I think on the CISO Council, he's been very much involved with us with zero trust from the beginning. So yeah, we're thinking that we're going to have our steering group be a resource for other agencies to just share what we've learned. I would just give props to DoD. They have made tremendous progress. Of all the agencies that I've seen, I think they have made the most progress, and they've really hit this hard.
Keith or Jamie, you guys want to talk a little bit about technologies you're looking at or considering?
Sure. Certainly, I think, at state, think about a pivot to 110,000 users teleworking, right, within 3 weeks. And a department that really, didn't telework at all. And so that has just unveiled such a huge opportunity of business process reengineering around whether it's HR, whether it's financials, whether it's business apps, this, that, and the other. I mean, so much opportunity. One of the things that we're looking at right now is in repatriation, right? Being able to truly automate and digitize those signatures when we repatriate individuals coming back in country. Because what tends to happen is weather conditions are so unpredictable that you don't know, and papers are sometimes lost for days, or they get wet, this, that, and the other, and we have no record, and so therefore there's no revenue coming back in because of that, or at least immediate or even in the near future. So that's one of the efforts. And then I agree with Sylvia on the zero trust. For us, it's getting to at least a strategy. And I challenged our new enterprise CISO and working with others across the organization to come back with a zero trust strategy, and also reach out to others and reach out to industry and see what tends to be working, and don't get caught up in buying tools. That's not going to cut it, right? Let's make sure we're truly connecting the dots in that effort. And then I think, lastly, I think the ATO process, right? Really, and I understand there may be a department out there looking at this already, but leveraging AI in the ATO process, where we're able to do it end to end and really take this manual burden off and really make serious headway in getting ahead of that.
Jamie, you want to add, or you want me to go to another question?
Yeah, you can probably go to another question. I'll just say all the above and blockchain. Go.
All of the above and blockchain. Excellent. All right. Got an interesting question from Ryan. He asks, speaking of cloud and specifically reining in cloud costs, is anyone looking at serverless architectures, and is that on anyone's radar?
We'll chime in there in that we've done that with the SBA.gov website. We actually have several capabilities on there that are actually founded on serverless technology. The challenge in there, I think, for a lot of, certainly for us, was making sure that we had that expertise to actually be able to provision and sustain that. So that's a great technology looking forward to the future. But I do want to sit there and kind of highlight that that's something that was driven by the needs of the organization. They wanted better responsiveness when it came to the website being out there. And really any of the things that we've been talking about has been driven by the mission and business areas within SBA saying, look, we need this, we need to be this much more responsive, and we want to be a high value provider. So serverless technology is just one of those elements that have gone that way.
Okay. Another good question comes from Connor. He asks, how have other CXOs changed their roles, their interest in IT and IT procurements since the pandemic forced the remote work? Have you had a different conversation with the CFO, HR, acquisition folks over the last 14, 15 months? Sylvia?
I don't know that we've so much changed the conversation with the CFO, but I would just say across the whole organization, the kind of the realization that IT is really fundamental to the proper functioning of the mission. That recognition has just been pervasive. So I think the consciousness of IT in all aspects of people's work, it's just there. So even though I would say IT does, there's this conversation we have in the FDIC, my organization, the CIOs organization, we're not like the line mission. We don't do bank exams. We don't resolve or receive banks or any of that stuff, but we're still considered actually core to the mission. So we may not be like one of the primary mission organizations, but we're seen as something that is absolutely essential for the mission to actually happen. So I would just say that was more the change, just a general consciousness in the organization.
I'll say that what I've noticed is that you have a lot more individuals reaching out with, and they're also very appreciative of the job that IT does, right? And behind the scenes, they used to say, well, don't give it to IT, but now it's let's make sure we reach out, and see what they're thinking and see how we can be assisted. And that recognition, has been obvious for me. It's something that I'm very keen to be aware of where the various pain points are throughout the organization. One of the first things I did when I got there is reach out to those bureaus, even though the permanent assistant secretaries weren't there, but reaching out to them and having discussions, understanding what their priorities were. And it was their opportunity to say, we don't like this, or we're not getting this type of service. But it was the extreme opposite, where they were more appreciative and saying that we look forward to continuing the partnership, and there's great things going on with the team, and let's keep it moving. So I think there's a greater appreciation for it.
Keith from SBA, jump in as well, because you're a relatively new CIO at SBA. You probably had to go through that same kind of education, learning, relationship building phase.
Yeah, so what's interesting is when I actually came back, the previous CIO or CFO that I was working with had come back as well. So we already had kind of that relationship, if you will, but I'd second Sylvia's comments that in the past, there might have been this notion that the expectation is if you pick up the phone, there's going to be a dial tone. So people didn't necessarily appreciate some of those commodity services, but when suddenly everybody was relying on us to do remote work, et cetera, suddenly we seeped into people's consciousness that, hey, there is something that we're delivering in here. So I think that conversation was good. And again, with what we were doing with the business areas, I think it just became much more obvious that, hey, there's possibly some opportunities to help the agency not only save money, but become more efficient. So it's been good dialogue.
We're pushing up right about 1 o'clock, so I want to be aware of everyone's time. And I'm going to give each of the panelists maybe 30 seconds to a minute to leave the audience with something. What's the big takeaway from our conversation today? And you know, we covered a lot of ground and a lot of different topics. But when we talk about IT modernization, where technology is taking your agency, what are you thinking about? Just leave the audience with something that they can either A, creates more questions so they'll email Keith a lot, or B, you'll answer a question so they won't email Keith a lot. So Jamie, you turned your microphone off, you take it away.
Hey, thanks a lot. One of the things that everybody's talking about is digital transformation. We're modernizing, we're making the digital transition. And the thing is, that's just table stakes. That's not what's going to be the really important thing. And what is the really important thing? It's the cultural change around how government serves the public. Because in all honesty, government has had this opinion that they're coming to me and they're going to do whatever we want. We have to change that on its head, because digital transformation enables the ability for the government to serve its citizens the way they want to be served, not like the DMV. I hate waiting in line. I don't care if you're in New York or California or whatever. Waiting in line at the DMV is always a terrible thing. We have to turn that around on its head. We have to start serving our public the way it wants to be served. Yeah, it might cost some, but that's okay. Thanks.
All right, but Jamie, I can't leave that hanging, okay? That is a great call out, right? But there are so many challenges with that issue, right? There is so many pieces of the way Congress funds you, the way procurement works, the way.
Yeah, you know what I say to that, Jason?
Well, you're not funded by Congress.
And I do that purposely, because what we have to do is focus on the priority. We're CIOs. We're the ones that give the support and the infrastructure. But without that further cultural change with our colleagues, without that discussion to our directors and our agency heads, it's not going to go anywhere, because it won't be used effectively. If we don't have a customer experience unit, we're failing. That has nothing to do with IT. Nope. And everything about reaching out and messaging and saying, we really want to serve our customer base. You know, I know the State Department is big on this, because it has US citizens as well as everybody else in the whole world who wants to get in. That is a huge way to serve people. So there's a lot of different things. It's all about mission. So mission first, but people always.
All right. Keith, jump in from stage.
I'm going to second all of those motions in there, and that I think Clare said it best, you know, meeting customers where they are. And I mean, that's truly the potential value for government, is it setting things up such that regardless of where they are, we did a lot of things during the pandemic, but at the end of the day, we still had over 90 regional district offices out there where people were coming in to those storefronts to sit there and actually access government services here. And we need to sit there and push that digital edge out to them so that we meet them where they are on their smartphone or computer, wherever it may be. So that's, to me, the potential for the future. And that all comes from having that digital background and organizing your data.
Other Keith?
Hey, so I'm really looking to establish this a customer-centric organization where we're putting the customer first. And, you know, I'm penciling that in on my org chart already, saying, hey, I look at my org chart, all I see is ops. We are more than ops, and that culture has to manifest itself throughout my entire bureau. And so with that, you know, taking that customer mindset, pushing it out to posts and everything, working with our users all the time, and being a partner with industry, that's the direction where I want to take the organization and the State Department.
All right. And Sylvia, you get the last word.
Yeah, the customer experience is everything. If we don't have that, we don't have anything, because ultimately it is all about the mission. So that's why we exist.
All right, short, sweet, to the point. Panelists, you all did a great job. Sylvia, Jamie, Keith, thank you so much for all your good work. We thank Claire for her time as well today. I see Jackie pop back up, so I'll throw it back to Jackie. Take it away.
Thanks, and thanks to all of you, Claire, Keith, Sylvia, and Jamie, of course, Jason, our moderator. Great to hear from you on your thoughts, priorities, and what really lies ahead for government. Jamie, I'll never, ever go to the DMV again without thinking about you personally, so thanks for that last final parting thought. I know you're all incredibly busy, so I sincerely appreciate you taking the time to share these great insights with us. Thanks to all of you, our attendees. We encourage you to take a moment to complete our survey and join us next month on June 24th for our webinar with our chief data officers on data-driven decision-making in government. Go to affirm.org for more details. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.